Today we are looking over the case of the infamously haunted Annabelle doll. Now this doll is so famous that it's had multiple horror movies inspired, made and titled after her own name. So let's start from the beginning. There were two roommates named Donna and Angie. They were both nurses who shared an apartment together. Now the origins of Annabelle stem from being a gift. It's said the mother of Donna gave the gift for her birthday around her late 20s or early 30s, as sources suggest. You might think, what would an adult woman want a doll as a gift for? Well, some people believe that Donna wasn't very pleased with the gift, but most sources seem to say that she was very happy and actually used Annabelle as a decorative item more than a playing doll as a child might. And it's said that she was happy receiving the doll because every time that she saw it, it reminded her of her mother who gifted it to her. And some sources even speculate that Annabelle was actually a Christmas present and not a birthday gift, but most seem to say that it was a birthday gift, so we're just gonna go with that for today's video. Either way, whether she liked the doll or not, she brought it back to her apartment with Angie. Now everything seemed as normal. Like I said, Donna used the doll as more of a decorative item, so she would leave it on a bed or on a sofa, just somewhere sat in the house on display, I guess. Now in the first few days of owning the doll, movements of Annabelle were reported, just really slight small movements that could be brushed off as, oh, I knocked it over by accident, or it just fallen on the floor. You just go about your day as normal, pick the doll back up and put it back where it was. However, things just got progressively worse and worse. For example, small movements turned to larger, unexplained movements. Like Donna would leave for work and the doll would have been resting on the sofa, but when she'd come back to work, she'd find the doll in her bedroom with the door shut. Now, you could easily explain this as maybe Angie moved the doll while Donna was at work, but it said that Angie was also not home at the time, and there were only them two that were living there. So was Donna forgetful? Aren't hours working as a nurse very demanding and draining? Well, that point could be argued with movements of the doll. However, this became a very common occurrence, even confusing Angie. And yes, again, they're both nurses, but surely one of them must have been able to explain or remember moving the doll, or knowing why or how. But both of them were just as confused as each other. Another person who would often visit the apartment was a guy called Lou. Now, we don't have too much information about Lou or anybody really mentioned in this case, to be honest, but Lou is speculated to have been Angie's boyfriend or fiance. Some sources only point them out to being good friends, but for the sake of the video, we'll say that they're together. Now, the significance of Lou was that he was the first person to see Annabelle's dark side. Some suggest Lou knew something was wrong with the doll straight away and sensed a great evil, something that the two roommates were unaware of. Either way, one of the first compelling instances was when Donna was out and Angie and Lou were in her room. They'd heard shuffling coming next door from Donna's room. Now again, she wasn't home, so the noise they heard was more of fear that an intruder could have possibly broken in. So Lou went to go and check. He peeked his head through the door, and to his surprise, hadn't seen anybody in there. The only notable thing he saw was the doll. Now, I'm unsure if this was Lou's first time seeing the doll for himself. There isn't really much details or claims, but it's believed that the doll was sat on Donna's bed, or was sat on a nearby chair in the bedroom, or was found on the bedroom floor. Lou decided to enter the room properly and found no evidence of a break-in. He began walking over to the doll, but in doing so, he felt a great pain in his chest area, and upon looking down, he saw several claw marks running down his chest that seemed to be wounded and bloody. Now, the description of this attack is quite severe. A mark and a scratch that would probably last weeks and potentially cause a scar, but within 2 days, those marks were nowhere to be seen. Not a trace, not a bruise, nothing. Almost like it never even happen. Other stories say that Lou was staying overnight. He slept on the sofa, and on the other end of the sofa was the doll, just sat there, where Donna would have placed it. So Lou was asleep on the sofa and he started to have a dream. Now perhaps I shouldn't call it a dream because he actually had a nightmare. In his nightmare, he was attacked by Annabelle, the doll. She had crawled up his legs and was scratching him, or something along the lines of that nature. After this nightmare, understandably, Lou was distressed. He threw the doll across the room and I guess yelled something like, "You're just a doll, you can't hurt anybody," to where the two roommates had come into the living room to find out what was happening. This is believed that the next day, or shortly after, when Donna had left the apartment and it was just Lou and Angie in their room, that was when they heard the shuffling noise next door in Donna's room, where Lou went to investigate and got the scratch marks. It's as though Annabelle got her revenge after Lou threw her across the room and somewhat disrespected her. That may explain the attack and why Lou was always the one that seemed to dislike the doll's energy. However, not all sources include the event of the nightmare that Lou had of the doll. Now, although not everybody talks about this event, it may explain why he was actually scratched first among Angie and Donna. Now, I assume in those 2 days of the marks being on Lou, it was enough time for both Donna and Angie to see what had happened, because shortly after, the two women had called a medium to come over to the apartment. Now, the medium who visited is unidentified. There's not even a first name online that I could come across. However, it's told that the medium had picked up on a spirit around the doll, a 7-year-old girl who went by the name Annabelle Higgins. The medium had told the two women that her body was found many years on the site of the apartment complex they live in. The medium said it was at first a field and she was discovered dead. Apparently the girl had died in a car crash, but I cannot confirm this, and with all the time that had passed, the girl's spirit still roamed around the area, and with Donna bringing back the doll, it had attracted the younger spirit to claim the doll as its personal vessel. Now, the medium believed the spirit was inside the doll, and the medium was able to understand all of this by performing a seance at the apartment. If you don't know what a seance is, it's like you light up candles, the medium will sit down, close their eyes, perhaps they just claim the energy and try to let any spirits nearby talk to them through them, and the medium will relay it to whoever is asking or wants to find out. The medium had also reportedly told Donna and Angie that the spirit felt comfortable around the two girls, and ironically, the doll was a Raggedy Ann doll, so it shared basically the same name as the spirit that passed. And the dolls have been around since the early 1900s, so perhaps the doll was popular enough that the spirit had recognized it and was attracted to it. However, the Annabelle doll was discovered to be newly made around the 1970s, which is a bit later on in the timeline from its popular origins. But of course, these types of dolls sold well in the past, so people would just keep making them, even in modern day. And also, this means that the medium has basically said the doll wasn't haunted when the mother bought it as the birthday gift. It only became haunted when Donna brought it back to the apartment and the spirit was attracted to it. So after the medium had told the two women the story, they actually felt sympathy for the young girl and decided that they did not want to banish the spirit from the doll. Instead, they invited it into their lives, welcomed it, and told the medium they did not want to get rid of it. The medium had even assured them the spirit was nothing sinister and that it was kind and friendly. Now, in my opinion, that doesn't add up. Lou was scratched, and he also had a nightmare. Now, yeah, you can explain nightmares as if you have worries, they can creep into your dreams, making it a nightmare. But the events before the seance just seems a little bit far for a 7-year-old spirit. If physical harm is being endured, it mustn't be friendly. And that's something I feel like the medium should have said. And I know there are some mediums out there that actually can sense all kind of energies, and they can tell if something is trying to trick them, but this medium didn't pick up on that. And Ed and Lorraine Warren seemed to think that the medium was tricked by this spirit, and that it wasn't a spirit, it was never even a living being, it was an inhuman spirit. Something demonic, something evil, that had told a lie to the medium, who told the women that made them feel sympathy and welcome it. And if you know anything about demons, all they need is permission. Once you gave it them permission once, that is it. It's in your life and you can't just banish it that easily. So anyway, we'll get more onto the Warrens a bit later on in the video, but after the medium visited, the activity didn't seem to calm down. Notes were found written in parchment paper, with notes written like "help me" or "help Lou," or again something along those lines. This was quite interesting because both Donna and Angie didn't own that sort of paper in the apartment, and it was supposedly written in a red crayon. So again, it's taking up that kind of energy that it's a young kid is writing in crayons. Parchment paper, if you don't know, is sort of like a baking sheet. It's grease resistant, non-stick resistant paper. It's also stronger against humidity, which is why it's commonly used for baking and not writing notes. So it's just a bit strange that it's on parchment paper. Now, to modern day, there is no such evidence of these claims. There's no photographs of the notes written or physical evidence of the notes or paranormal experiences. It's just the legends, and of course all we have is the physical doll. So everything read today is off the words of who knows what really, but it's still a really interesting case. So back to what we were saying, there was still activity after the medium had visited, and apparently it got to a point where Donna had come home from work and found the doll on her bed again, with her hands matted in a strange red liquid, like the resemblance of blood. Many believe that the red liquid came from the doll itself. I don't think Donna wanted to stick around to find out though, because as soon as this happened, she had just had enough. She knew something wasn't right. And even before finding this liquid on the doll, some even say that the doll would change its leg positions or arm positions, it would cross its legs or fold its arms when it wasn't left sat in that position. So the doll would even move its posture, as well as supposedly seeming to teleport around the house, because how could it shut itself in a bedroom door when it doesn't even have thumbs or the strength a doll would have to push a door? So like I said, they'd had enough. So this is when an episcopal priest was called. They wanted to rid this spirit. The priest was known as Father Hogan. In some stories, the priest learned what had been going on and decided to contact his superior, Father Cook, who actually knew and alerted Ed and Lorraine Warren. Now, I personally believe the priest did try to help, because how else would Ed and Lorraine... I cannot say the names together. If you would have saw like other videos, I always struggle. Anyway, I do believe the priest was trying to help, because how else were Ed and Lorraine Warren on the case? How else would they find out? Now, this wasn't a popular case or published at the time, it was just simple phone contacts, unlike the Enfield haunting where Ed and Lorraine Warren found out from interviews, radios, and newspapers. Either way, the Warrens were involved. Now, who are the Warrens? I probably don't even need to explain who they are, but I'm going to. Now, this pair are American paranormal investigators. Edward Warren was a self-taught demonologist, and Lorraine was a clairvoyant medium, someone who could gain information from objects, people, places, or distant future outcomes, which is beyond normal sensory contact. So basically, she has an ability most people don't have that actually help with the paranormal. So they had helped in over 10,000 cases in their lifetime career, and took haunted items off owners from cases to protect them and lock them safe away from everybody. They have a museum with all of these haunted items, and people can visit them today. In 1952, they even founded their own society, the New England Society for Psychic Research, where they published books and private investigations with various reports of paranormal activity. Sadly, both have passed away already, Edward in 2006 and Lorraine more recently in 2019. Now, once Father Cook had contacted the Warrens, they were immediately interested and contacted Donna and had a conversation about everything. The Warrens believed that bringing the medium over was a huge mistake because they believed something demonic was talking to the medium and manipulating themselves to be a friendly spirit. The Warrens believed the spirit attached to the doll was inhuman and something demonic, and they believed that inhuman spirits cannot possess dolls, they only possess humans. So that is the Warrens' personal belief system, that yeah, human spirits can possess items, but anything demonic and out of this world does not have the power to do that. They can only come for your vessel, and that's what they want and are only interested in. So when they heard the sad story by the medium of the young girl, it played on their heartstrings, which made them invite it in. The demon tricked the woman to allowing it to stay, and if you know about demons, like I said before, all they need is permission. The Warrens identified their situation in 2 stages. The first stage is you'll see an item or an object start moving around, and that is the spirit's or entity's way of you getting to acknowledge it so that you are aware of it being there. The second stage is accepting it there and allowing it to be there, where it would eventually possess its victims and potentially harm or try to kill you. This is what they warned Donna and Angie of, and that they were now verging into stage 2, and that if this continued for even a few more weeks, they could be in serious danger. So they arrived at the apartment with Father Cook, to where they convinced him to do a 7-page exorcism around the apartment, cited from some sort of biblical book. Now, Father Cook understandably didn't feel comfortable doing so. He didn't really like doing exorcisms. But the Warrens believed it was the best way to rid the spirit before they would eventually take it off their hands. After the exorcism, they took the doll to their car for the journey home. Now, the Warrens were worried that the doll could do something to harm them while they were driving, like causing accidents, so they avoided the freeway and went on a back route. They'd had Annabelle seatbelted in the back, and to their accuracy, the power steering failed on dangerous curves, and the brakes even kept failing behind other vehicles, and there were also many other close collisions on the drive back. Ed Warren then poured holy water onto the doll, and then all of a sudden, all of these mysterious mishaps just stopped. The car started working as normal again. They made it safely back home. The Warrens had then kept Annabelle with them for a few weeks and reported seeing the doll levitate, and in some periods it would actually just remain quiet. The doll would then start teleporting again, being in different rooms of the house, and it wasn't supposed to be there. The exact same reports from Donna and Angie, so there is some correlation with the haunting of the doll. When the Warrens weren't around to be with the doll, they'd actually locked it in an outer office building. They returned to find the doll sat comfortably upstairs in Edward's easy chair when they opened the main front door. Remember, this doll was supposed to be locked away in an outer building, not their home. So it's teleported, it's just materialized somewhere else. It's even said that the doll had pure hatred for clergymen whenever they visit the Warrens. Now, they investigated many cases, so it's no surprise that they had clergymen visiting them. It's just in the nature of their occupation. One priest known as Father Jason Bradford, a Catholic exorcist, visited the house. Upon seeing Annabelle, he told it, "You're just a rag doll, you can't hurt anyone," to where he tossed it back into the chair. On the priest's drive back home, he had gotten into a really bad crash and almost died. The priest had technically been deemed the second person who disrespected the doll, along with Lou, when he said something similar and threw it across the room. Except the clergyman's experience was a lot more extreme. He really almost did die. Now, if we're going back to what the medium said, if this younger spirit really did die in a car crash, that might explain the option of accident that the priest got into, but it's also just a really sinister retaliation that you wouldn't expect a 7-year-old spirit to be doing. So that really does beg the question, does the doll really have these types of powers like teleportation, materialization, causing accidents and crashes and bad misfortune? Well, that seems to be the case with Annabelle, if you disrespect it especially. And the Warrens were even appalled by the behaviour of the priest. Ed told the man, "That's one thing you better not say." Upon leaving 1 hour later, the accident happened. Lorraine even sensed something bad before the priest left, and pleaded the priest to be careful when driving back and to call her when he arrived home. Although Lorraine sensed tragedy, he had to go his own way. A few hours later, the priest rang the Warrens and told them what had happened. His brakes failed, and he entered a busy intersection. Now there is a pattern. Annabelle has the power to cause vehicle failure. It's already been an issue for the Warrens when they were taking Annabelle back to their house. Right up until Ed cleansed the doll in holy water, the priest's vehicle was completely written off and had an almost near-death experience. Now the Warrens were building a special case for Annabelle in their occult museum, all items that they've been collecting from their many years of investigating. People often visit but have to make a signature that the staff are not reliable for any misfortune to the visitors, and especially if death is caused in the visit or after the visit of the museum, that they are not liable for that account. The items are believed to be so dangerous that you can't enter without signing acknowledgement forms. This is seriously a real thing. You can't just walk into this museum. And they also don't just let anybody into their museum as well. And they certainly won't let you record around the museum without permission, or if they don't think you have the right intentions. It's a private museum, they have the right, you can't just record. Now the staff encourage you to be respectful and to not engage your attention on one item for too long. As long as you follow their rules, you will be safe and you'll have nothing to worry about in your acknowledgement form. Now, Annabelle isn't really reported to move around much anymore since residing in the museum. She has a special reinforced glass display case. She sits in it and it's locked. It has 2 prayers written inside it and it's blessed once a month by clergymen, as well as many other items in the museum. They'll all be blessed every single month. Now the doll is also blessed whenever it has to be moved. The doll has 2 display cases, one for when the staff at the museum bring it to the press conferences and events, and one for when it stays in the museum. They also don't physically touch Annabelle with their hands when they move the doll out of the display case. Ed taught them to be as quick as possible and respectful as possible. The reason why they don't touch the doll with their bare hands is because Ed Warren and Lorraine Warren believe that it creates a connection with the doll, and you do not want to be creating a connection with anything evil. So to avoid that, they pick it up in a blanket. Now, I've learned this all from a YouTube video where the museum allowed an investigation for an overnight challenge, and this was the first ever investigation ever allowed by the museum, so it was really a big deal. I've kind of forgot the name of the YouTubers, but I'm going to put them up on screen. It was such an interesting video and I really enjoyed watching it, so I will leave that as a link down in the description if you do wish to go and watch that. It was really crazy, and you can really see how you would be treated if you go to the museum. So if you're planning to make a trip, maybe watch that video to see how it all works and what actually happens. So yeah, I forgot the name, but I am subscribed to them, and yeah, links will be down below. So while the doll was displayed in the museum, visitors were seeing it, and it became rather popular and eventually went on to having its own movies, which I'll show again up on screen. It's had several different movies made out of it from the Annabelle series. The The doll actually is known to have caused one death in its entire lifetime, and this was where a visitor broke the rule at the museum. He was defiant and didn't listen to Edward Warren. He went up to the doll and started banging on the case, insisting the doll put scratches on him and other people. Ed kicked out the younger man, as well as his girlfriend who was visiting the museum. This was even talked about in the documentary on that YouTube video I was talking about. So on the way home, the couple travelled back on a motorbike and were apparently laughing and making fun of the doll when he lost control of the bike and went head into a tree. The man died from the crash and the girlfriend was severely injured and left in hospital for a year. When questioned about the crash when she woke up, she told them that they were laughing about the doll when they crashed. Now Ed warns you to never challenge evil and that no man is more powerful than Satan. So that's the case of Annabelle the doll. Of course, we don't actually have much evidence of these accounts and we just mainly have to take the word from the Warrens, but overall it's very scary and interesting and it's no wonder why it's made such a successful horror series. Now of course, the real Annabelle doll is not a porcelain doll like displayed in the Annabelle horror movie, or horrific as it is in real life. It's just an Annabelle rag doll. The doll itself doesn't look evil, nor does the doll have braided pigtails like in the film. So the doll unfortunately just had an entity that got attached to it because it was attracted to it, so it wasn't haunted in the first place. I haven't really mentioned this either, but it's also believed that the doll was bought from a second-hand store, but was relatively a new model, I guess you could say. So to today's standards, the doll is about 50 years old. So not so much new anymore, and I'm sure these types of dolls are still sold in some places of the world today, whether they're brand new or used. And for the most part in children's childhoods in the 1900s, they would have had innocent, harmless toys of these rag dolls, and perhaps it's for the best that the doll resided with Donna, because she was an adult when she was haunted by this entity. Imagine if this was a child. Of course, you wouldn't want anybody to be going through this alone, but perhaps it was for the best because they managed to contact the right people to take the doll. You know, it really brings you to think if this was left with somebody else, maybe somebody without the right occupation would still be holding it, and that might be really dangerous. So at least it's out of harm's way now, whether it's real or not. So please let me know your thoughts, I'm genuinely interested. This concludes another episode on haunted dolls. Make sure to check out other videos in this series. You'll find a playlist on my channel. We'll cover many more in the future. We've already talked about the haunted Robert the doll. There is some similarities with this doll and Annabelle. They were both gifts. So please watch that if you haven't. I know you'll find it interesting, especially if you made it through all the way to the end of this video. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video and stay spooky.